Hi, I'm Erik Voss, and Incredibles 2's huge success has meant millions of fans have been delighted with intricately designed action, layered humor, and clingy moms eating bow babies. And like any great Pixar film, Incredibles 2 is dense with subtle design details that you might have missed and nods to other Pixar movies. So let us rewatch this movie scene by scene and break down all the Easter eggs and then scarf them down like bow babies. Nom, 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 nom. Really can't get past that opening short. Spoiler warning if you didn't see the movie yet, and let's get started. Before the movie even begins, notice how the animators updated the routine fanfare for Pixar and Disney, giving Cinderella's castle a bit of a makeover with this red and black two-dimensional Incredibles style look. And as it fades, notice how the front windows remain lit, so lit, giving us the Incredibles I2 logo. Now this movie's story begins immediately after the first movie ends, with the Underminer's attack on Municiberg. We see the family's final mask up moment now from the alternate angle of Tony Ridinger, the kid who had just asked out Violet at the track meet. Now Tony is recounting what he witnessed to Rick Dicker, the government superhero relocation guy from the first movie. He wipes Tony's memory in the same way and with the same device as the one that he used on Kari, the babysitter in the Jack Jack Attack short. Now you may have noticed that Dicker's voice has changed. The original actor who voiced him was Bud Luckey, a longtime Pixar animator who passed away earlier this year. Now the character is voiced by Jonathan Banks, the gruff character actor who plays Mike in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, along with Bob Odenkirk, who voices Winston Dever in this movie. Actually, there was a later scene that shows Helen emotionally hugging and thanking Dicker for everything, which to me seems like kind of a subtle tribute by Pixar to their beloved team member. Now, this whole opening section delivers on the promise of the first movie's ending, showing us the entire Parr family in action. The Underminer is voiced by actor John Ratzenberger, who has made a vocal cameo in every Pixar movie. The Underminer caves in the ground beneath a bank to rob it, the Municiberg Credit Union, which could be a subtle nod to the MCU, which joins the Pixar as part of the Disney family. Now, in the background of all this, we can see Violet and Dash's school, which has a mascot of the Spartans. That's actually the mascot of the high school that the director, Brad Bird, went to, Corvallis High School in Corvallis, Oregon. And if you look at the sides of the buildings here, which you should do in every Pixar movie because there's always Easter eggs there, you actually see some shout outs to some people who worked on the film. One of the signs says Christov, which is a nod to Anthony Christov, the movie's art director. And if you look closely, you can see the sign Grindle for Nicole Grindle, a producer in the movie. And yeah, in general, during the scene throughout the movie, you probably noticed that the cars and the buildings and the clothes, they all reflect a retro 60s design. There's been a lot of talk over when exactly The Incredibles takes place. There was a newspaper in the first movie that said 1962, and director Brad Bird has said that he just wanted the movie to feel like the 60s. The Municiberg City Hall has a greenish dome, which the Pixar animators lifted from the real-life City Hall of Emeryville, California. That's where the Pixar studios are located. Let's move on to this motel that Dicker puts him up in. It's called the Safari Court, which is an animated version of the real-life Safari Inn in Burbank, California. And we see the Parr family at dinner, and most of the voice actors have returned in their roles here. Bob Parr, Mr. Incredible, is once again voiced by Craig T. Nelson, and Helen, Elastigirl, is voiced by Holly Hunter. Sarah Vowell has come back to do the voice of Violet, but they had to change it up with Dash. In the first Incredible, Spencer Fox voiced him, but now his voice is too grown up. He's gone through adolescence. So they replaced him with actor Huck Milner. And they used archived recordings of the same baby that voiced Jack Jack in the first movie to voice him here. Notice the Chinese food takeout cartons that they're eating out of. This same carton shows up in a lot of Pixar movies: A Bug's Life, Toy Story 2, Monsters Inc., Ratatouille, and Inside Out. Then Frozone, voiced by Samuel L. Jackson, joins up with Helen and Bob and hands them this business card for Winston Dever. Notice the address, 1200 Park Avenue. That's actually the current address of Pixar Animation Studios in Emeryville. The DevTech skyscraper has a very interesting look to it. According to the animators, they designed it to look like stacks of poker chips as a way to reflect the gamble that these characters are making to work with the Devers. Then upstairs we meet Winston and his sister Evelyn. Now this movie doesn't try too hard to hide the fact that Evelyn will later be revealed as the movie's true villain. First, her name is Evelyn Dever, and if you just enunciate the syllables differently, you get Eve, I'm trying to kill you! Or yeah, Evil Endeavor. Also, she's voiced by Catherine Keener, who recently played Missy Armitage in Get Out. She's a villain who hypnotizes her victims, just like Evelyn does in this movie. And Evelyn's earrings have an interesting design, but hold on to that one because I'll come back to it later. And Winston tells them the story of how their father once admired the old generation of supers, including Dynaguy and Gazerbeam. Now, these are both callbacks to the first movie. Dynaguy was the super who got sued, and Gazerbeam was killed by Syndrome's robot on the island. We also get another callback to the first movie during Winston's sales pitch. You can see the screen behind him shows Frozone fighting that robot. And by the way, this whole idea of supers needing to stand up and become their better selves to carry the burden of society has been interpreted by some as an example of the socio-political ideology known as objectivism that's furthered by the author Ayn Rand. Brad Bird has actually had to come out and refute any political agenda in these movies. And later, when Helen calls Winston back to tell him she'll take the gig, the area code is 510. 510 is actually the real-life area code of Emeryville. Helen's new job allows the family to move into this DevTech mansion. Its design actually reflects the modern architecture of the mansion in the movie North by Northwest. Winston says over the phone that the place belongs to an eccentric billionaire who wanted to enter and leave his home unnoticed. Now that sounds like a nod to Bruce Wayne, whose mansion also features a secret entrance through a waterfall. And as the family moves in, we see that Bob actually kept his old fan posters from the first movie. Now that we've moved into the movie's second act, we see how Bob and Helen reverse roles from the first movie. Now Helen is the one going out to be the breadwinner, as Bob has become the stay-at-home parent. And throughout this subplot at the home, we see some interesting details. Jack's crib has a Luxo ball design, referencing the ball that appeared in the first Pixar short. It shows up again and again in Pixar movies. And later in the movie, inside Jack's crib is this action figure. The animators have said that they snuck in an Easter egg for Toy Story 4 somewhere in this movie. I'm wondering if this action figure is that. Throughout the movie, characters watch TV shows from the 60s like Outer Limits and Johnny Quest. Johnny Quest has actually been mentioned by Brad Bird as a major influence on his career in animation. The word quest actually shows up a lot on buildings in the background of this movie. We also see that Bob still drinks out of the same coffee mug from his time working at Insuracare, the insurance company in the first movie. Bob has to help Dash with his math homework called New Math. New Math was actually the name of a new educational standard in the 50s, but here it's more of a parody on the recent Common Core standards that have been driving parents crazy because it's not the way we learned it. And Jack fighting the raccoon was such a great fight scene, and we get to see him use even more of his long list of powers. In total in this movie, we saw 17 different powers. And let's run down all of them. He can make multiple copies of himself. He can turn into this purple demon thing when he's angry, he doesn't get his num-num cookie. He can burst into flames like the Human Torch. He can shoot green lasers out of his eyes. He can grow to larger sizes at some point. He can teleport into a different dimension, also proving the existence of other dimensions. He can copy physical features of other people. He does that with Edna Mode. He definitely has super strength. We saw him tossing lawn chairs. He also seems to have invulnerability because, yeah, he beat that raccoon without a scratch on him. He can definitely levitate, and he has telekinesis. It was shown when he was fighting the raccoon, and remember, he lifted the goggles off of his mom using telekinesis. And then he shoots off like a rocket when he sneezes. He can emit electricity. He can phase shift through solid surfaces. He can transform into a super heavy metal form. He can transform into a shapeless gelatinous blob. And you could argue that he's capable of mimicry, impersonating Edna's walk and her mannerisms after just a few days. Yes, I consider that a superpower. Bill Hader is my hero. Now we also see the ramifications of Tony's memory wipe and Violet's subplot. In her high school, the inside of Tony's locker contains a campaign sticker reading Deanna for president. That's a nod to Deanna Marsigliese. She's a Pixar character artist. Campaigning against Deanna is Matt Johnson, seen in a banner in the background of this scene. Johnson is a software engineer for Pixar. Now Bob calls Dicker to track down Tony, and in Dicker's file, you can see that Tony's address is 206 South Ferris. Now that's a nod to Pixar animator Justin Ferris. And as they catch up with Tony at his job in the Happy Platter Diner, the interior of the diner is modeled on the Cafe 101 diner in Hollywood. I love that place. Meanwhile, Helen is the one having all the fun, foiling crimes in New Urbum. And there are a ton of Easter egg nods to Pixar in this whole sequence. Okay, here we go. Ow. An address on an awning is 1001 West Cutting, which was the original street address for Pixar Animation in Richmond, California. Then on the hover train platform, a poster in the background may look familiar. That's the original poster for Disney's Monorail in 1959. And the number on the hover train is A113. A113 shows up again and again in every Pixar film and a lot of animation. It refers to a classroom number at Cal Arts where all these animators studied. It'll come up again in this movie. On the streets, Helen passes a sign showing Miller, a nod to Tom Miller, a Pixar set dresser. She also passes a Haloof sign for Sirit Haloof, the movie's production coordinator, and a sign for Imagire, for Bryn Imagire, the shading art director. And then as Helen jumps the bike into the building, she leaves a sign for Triple Dent Gum, the Pixar version of Trident Gum. That's the gum from Inside Out. Remember it had that ad jingle that will get stuck in your head?
Triple Dent Gum will make you smile.
Did I ask for the gum commercial?
sorry I reminded you. And one of the rooftops she hops on also has a Luxo ball design. In another building, it has a sign for Nolte Industrial, a nod to Matt Nolte of Pixar's art department. Okay, well, a non-visual plot detail that actually reflects this role reversal between Helen and Bob. Notice the way Helen stops a train, with the train cars slowly grinding to a stop before nearly toppling over the edge. This is actually the same way that Bob stops a runaway train at the beginning of the first Incredibles movie. Actually, you can see now how Helen has learned from that experience. Those people are all pissed off at Bob. She makes sure to check in with everyone to see that they're okay. Moving on to this phone call between Bob and Helen. There are actually two pretty interesting details here. The newspaper article she's reading is written by a guy named T. Mathot of the Affiliated Press. Now that's a nod to the Associated Press. And Ted Mathot is a storyboard artist for Pixar. Now there is a second really interesting visual detail here in this scene. I'll get to that in a second, but first, thanks to our sponsor Skillshare for helping us make this video. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of classes in design, business, technology, and more. Its premium membership gives you unlimited access to high-quality classes on must-know topics, so you can improve your skills, unlock new opportunities, and do the work you love. Now, I'm a screenwriter, but I didn't go to film school or anything because my parents made normal people money. But it's all good, guys, because now we can use online resources like Skillshare to catch up. I liked Kevin Cava's feature film screenwriting the first 10 pages. It reminded me how critical it is to hook an audience right away, which is why I've now started beginning these videos by shouting jokes at you. Skillshare is also more affordable than most learning platforms out there. An annual subscription is less than $10 a month. Try finding a film school that reasonable. And we're gonna do a special offer for you guys. The first 500 people to sign up with the link in the description below will get their first 2 months for free. Just go to skl.sh/newrockstars5 or click on the link in the description below. Okay, back to this phone call scene with Helen and Bob. Check out the painting behind Helen. There are 5 geometric shapes, one thin one off to the right, with the other 4 off to the left. This image reflects the Parr family, with each shape representing a different member of that family. And Helen is the one on the far right. It's reflecting her separation from the rest of the family as she takes on this new role. Now later, Helen goes on a talk show where she runs into Ambassador Henrietta Selick. Her name is actually a nod to Henry Selick, a longtime animation director for Disney in the 70s and 80s. He later went freelance and worked on The Nightmare Before Christmas and Coraline. The character Selick is voiced by actress Isabella Rossellini, known for her role in the David Lynch movie Blue Velvet. The ambassador's blue velvet wardrobe may be a nod to that movie. And then after the Screenslaver hypnotizes a talk show crew, Elastigirl chases down the helicopters to save the ambassador. And on the buildings in the background are a couple more nods to Pixar names. There's Sayer Vision for Rick Sayer, a longtime technical director for Pixar, and Hale Stone for Jeff Stone, an assistant editor for the movie. Meanwhile, back at home, the stresses of Bob's new role start to weigh on him. Check out this scene with Jack Jack.
Cookie. Cha-Cha want a cookie?
This moment is referenced to the movie Poltergeist, in which actor Craig T. Nelson played a different father trying to follow his kid's disembodied voice echoing from another dimension in his house.
So you're gonna get a real spanking from the both of us.
Jack Jack's dimension hop actually begins with him staring at a TV screen, just like Carol Ann's did. And notice what Jack Jack is watching.
Girl, come on, leave the saving of the world to the men? I don't think so.
That's actually a clip from the superhero documentary that opened the first Incredible movie.
Leave the saving of the world to the men? I don't think so.
Later, Bob sees his old car, the Incredibile, now won by a collector at auction on TV. Now this collector is actually an old reused character designed by Pixar. His original name was Alexander Galbaki. He was going to be a rival designer and mortal enemy to Edna Mode, but that whole subplot was cut, so they reused his look here. Dash asks his dad if he plans to steal the car back, and Bob thinks about it for a second and then says no. I feel like this could be a nod to O.J. Simpson. The reason O.J. eventually did jail time was for trying to steal memorabilia that used to belong to him, but now was later bought by a collector. Also later in the collector's home, among his vehicle collection is Lola, Agent Coulson's sports car from the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show. In desperation, Bob takes Jack Jack to Edna Mode, voiced once again by director Brad Bird. Edna designs a protective suit for Jack Jack and a baby monitor type indicator of which power he's about to use. And this whole scene is another example of this role reversal between the spouses. It's a recreation of that moment when Helen visited with Edna in the first movie, with Bob now in the sliding chair. And here, Edna mentions mentions Jack listening to the music of Mozart, which is another callback to babysitter Kari in the first movie and in Jack Attack. Remember, she tells Helen that listening to Mozart makes baby smarter, and in the short, Mozart seems to unlock more of Jack's powers. And jumping back to Helen, she tracks down the Screenslaver as he delivers his chilling rant about society's dependence on technology. And yeah, I was pretty creeped out at that shot of Elastigirl stretching open the locks of the room with Screenslaver stand on the other side of the door watching her. Like, I'm supposed to be scared right now. In this office are tons of books and printouts about hypnosis, and one of them features this eye logo with the spokes coming out. This is the same design of Evelyn's earrings that I mentioned earlier. So if you somehow didn't put together that she was the villain, maybe this super subtle design detail tipped it for you. As Elastigirl wrestles with the Screenslaver, who's actually an innocent hypnotized pizza guy, you can see on the desktop behind them is this lamp. This is the Luxo lamp from the Luxo short and every Pixar opening title. And then when Elastigirl knocks the Screenslaver to the street below, look over to the right and you can see this truck. This is a 60s retro design of the Pizza Planet truck, which is another detail that shows up an Easter egg in pretty much every Pixar movie. Elastigirl celebrates with a bunch of other supers gathered by the Devers. There's He-Lectrix, Cruciauer, Brick, Screech, and Reflux. And then there's Void, who's a nerdy fan of Elastigirl. She's voiced by Sophia Bush, though her character evokes Kristen Stewart quite a bit. In this section, Evelyn reveals herself to Elastigirl as the villain. She paralyzes her with these hypnotism goggles. While explaining her motives to Elastigirl, she references Albert Einstein's time as a patent clerk, which is actually a nod to the movie Ghostbusters, when Venkman says the same thing to defend inventors' humble beginnings.
Einstein did his best stuff when he was working as a patent clerk. You know how much a patent clerk earns? No.
Now it's here in the movie when everything goes to hell for the heroes. Elastigirl, Mr. Incredible, Frozone, and the other new heroes all get hypnotized, forcing Dash, Violet, and Jack to escape the mansion in the Incredibile. And they chase down the Dever yacht by shifting the Incredibile into Hydro mode, which was actually a setting that was teased in the first movie when Mr. Incredible initially scrolled through the various options. Meanwhile, on that boat, several ambassadors and supers gather. And check out this one female super. Now, she isn't given a name, but this character was actually originally designed to be Honey. That's Frozone's wife, whom he, doesn't really get along with. Brad Bird just thought it would be funny if the character was only heard off screen, but they wanted to use that design in this big group shot. And the ambassadors all sign an international superhero accord to legalize superheroism. And a close-up of this document has a ton more Easter eggs. So let's speed through them all. In the upper right corner, the document header says A113, and I already got into the nod with the name Henrietta Selick, but the next one down is Y Khan for Yasmin Khan, a Pixar rendering supervisor. Beneath that is A Barriaro for Alan Barriaro. He directed a Pixar short Piper, for which he won an Oscar. Beneath him is Huluf, that's the production designer I mentioned earlier. And then on the right column, there's E Nemesio for Ernesto Nemesio, a Pixar digital painter. Beneath him is P Ting for Phyllis Ting, a digital artist. And then Kei Yoku for Korea Yoku. She's a character animator who helped actually design the Elastabike. And then R Briante for Rodney Briante, Pixar's feature film department manager. And then in this third act, lots of fun madness follows, leading to the supers regaining control and Mr. Incredible using the vessel's anchor to change its trajectory away from the city. Actually, on the deck, Dash and Violet debate over when to retract the anchor, with Violet shouting, "Push a button!" and Dash responding, "Not yet." That's another callback to the climax of the first movie.
Press the button!
Not yet!
Evelyn Dever, aka Eve, I'm gonna kill you, tries to escape in a plane, even shooting up to a high altitude to deprive Helen of oxygen, giving her hypoxia. But we actually get a reminder of Helen's training as a pilot, and she's able to overcome this and take Evelyn down with the help of Void. And Mr. Incredible and Frozone stop the boat from ramming the city. Nice. The closing sequence of the film contains a few more Easter eggs. Violet gets a second shot with Tony, and you can see a poster for Happily Ever After Dance. That's a meta joke about this being the Happily Ever After portion of the movie. And as the family drives Violet and Tony to their date, the car passes another sign for Triple Dent Gum. Remember, it's the one that gets stuck in your head. Yeah, sorry. And lastly, the movie theater's marquee displays the film Dementia 113, just kind of a double Easter egg. Dementia 13 is actually the name of one of the early movies directed by Francis Ford Coppola, long before directing The Godfather. Also, you may have noticed that the A is discolored, making A113 stand out, the last reference to that Cal Arts classroom. Yeah, what happened to all these animators in that freaking classroom? It's starting to get creepy. You cry for help. Oh, and if you stuck around for the credits, there's one last little bonus detail. The Underminer got away earlier in the movie, so he's still at large. And at the very end of the credits, we get one last little reminder of that, with his drill tank crawling across the screen. But a question I'm curious to know from you guys. Who do you think is the most dangerous villain of these Incredibles movies? Syndrome or Evelyn/Screenslaver? And sure, you know what? Let's throw the Underminer in there. He is the only one still out there. Comment with your thoughts or tweet me directly at EA Voss. Like this video, share it around, and subscribe to New Rockstars for deep dives and all the stuff you love. We did a breakdown of Coco last year, and we also do videos about the Lego movies. Thanks for watching, and kids, if you feel a rumble beneath you, it's the Underminer coming to burrow into your room, snatch you into his big vacuum, and all that will be left of you will be your screams echoing through the earth, drowned in the drilling and the grinding of his hellborn beast. Don't leave loose ends, Pixar. I'll turn them into ghost stories.